What do you do when kindness costs your pride? In Accra's morning light, when the streets smelled of frying coos and petrol, Kofi Mensah walked fast. He had trained himself to move as if the world were a queue and he was first in it. His mother used to say, "Kofi, your feet are impatient." She meant he was ambitious, and she meant he did not listen. At 29, Kofi was a sales officer at Akwaba Holdings, a fast-growing logistics company whose new glass headquarters looked like a ship that had run aground in a sea of traffic. The lobby shone. The security men wore crisp uniforms. Clients came from Dubai and London. In that building, where air conditioning hummed like a machine that manufactured future, Kofi could almost believe the stories he told himself, that he was a breath away from being senior, that a better car would soon replace his second-hand Corolla, that one day he would send photos of himself in front of a tall building to the WhatsApp group of old schoolmates and let the emojis bow. He dressed the part, sharp navy suits, slim ties, a watch he couldn't afford but paid for in 12 monthly installments. He had learned the big company nod, confident, not obsequious, friendly, not familiar, and he had learned to laugh at jokes before anyone else. It made people feel like they were winning. But there was a flaw in him, a small stone in the shoe that made him walk a certain way. He loved to rise by making someone else small. He would correct an intern's grammar in front of everyone, or announce to a delivery driver that some of us care about punctuality loud enough for others to hear. He wouldn't call it cruelty. He would call it standards. On the Tuesday our story begins, the sky was so bright that the blue looked polished. Kofi parked 2 blocks from work. The company's car park was temporarily closed for resurfacing, and hurried along Kwame Nkrumah Avenue, weaving through hawkers in the early rush. At the corner near the coconut stand sat an old man Kofi had seen before. He was thin and ash-coloured, wearing a faded kente wrapper like a flag that had lost its wind. Beside him lay a small cardboard sign. "Help me buy medicine." He didn't harass people. He kept his hands folded and his chin lifted as if he were looking into a distance only he could see. A pair of school children stopped. One girl with blue beads in her hair placed a coin into the old man's bowl. "God bless you," the old man said, his voice a gentle gravel. Kofi was almost past when the old man looked up at him, and for a moment their eyes met, not pleading, not grasping, only present, like a hand resting on a table. The old man said, "My son, share a little." Kofi's pride, always near the surface, never far from his tongue, rose like a cobra. He was running late. His phone buzzed with a message from the team group chat. Reminder, all hands with the CEO at 9 a.m. Be punctual. He thought of the line of staff that would be entering the auditorium, of the way the CEO, Mr. Kwesi Boateng, a man whose suits seemed to fit around his life rather than around his body, would be scanning faces. "I don't encourage begging," Kofi said, loud enough for the school children to hear. "That's why this country cannot move forward." Always asking, he let a laugh out, sharp and quick. "What medicine? Go and work." A few passers-by glanced over. The little girl, who had given a coin, pulled at her friend's sleeve. The old man did not lower his eyes. He looked at Kofi the way a deep well looks up at the sky. "I am working," he said softly. "I am teaching." "You are teaching who, old man?" "To sit on the roadside," Kofi's voice carried. A trotro honked, a vendor called out the price of mangoes, and still Kofi's words made a small clear circle of silence. "If everyone does like you, who will sweep the streets? Who will deliver the goods?" "I am teaching you," the old man said. Kofi laughed again, a bigger sound this time, because it felt like a victory. He turned to walk off, and a familiar scent of sandalwood cologne slid into the circle of silence behind him, and a shadow stretched across the pavement like a late afternoon arriving too early. Kofi, said a voice that made several people stand straighter by reflex. What is happening here? Kofi whirled. There was Mr. Boateng, the CEO, holding a takeaway cup of espresso and wearing the crisp stillness of a man who had made friends with time. He had come to the corner coffee truck, unseen by Kofi in his rush. 2 bodyguards and a driver hovered at the edge of the scene, unsure whether to step forward. For 1 second Kofi's brain stuttered. He saw himself as he must look. A well-dressed young man lecturing an old one, words like stones in his mouth. His face heated. He opened his mouth to say something nimble and redeeming, but his pride, flustered, shoved out a different sentence. Oh, sir, just encouraging responsibility. We must not indulge laziness. The old man looked from Kofi to the CEO and back again, like a chess player counting squares. Good morning, Kwesi, he said to Mr. Boateng, making the name sound like an old kented cloth pulled out of a trunk. People turned. The CEO blinked. Good morning, Nana, Mr. Boateng said, and bowed slightly. Kofi had never seen him bow to anyone. The old man smiled as if a breeze had found him. May your house be cool, he said. And yours, the CEO said. Kofi's mouth went dry. Nana. His Ashanti was rusty, but he knew Nana was a title for elders and chiefs. He had just told a Nana to go and work. Walk with me, Mr. Boateng said to Kofi, voice calm. We are not late. Not yet. They left the old man with his bowl and sign, but not with the same air they had brought. The street hummed again. The sound of commerce swallowed the moment. Kofi's heart thudded. He felt 2 yesterdays old. As they crossed the street, the CEO said, Tell me what you saw. Kofi swallowed. An old man begging. And what did he see? The CEO asked. Kofi had no answer. They walked the 2 blocks to the head office, in a silence that made Kofi painfully aware of small sounds, the scratch of shoe leather, the hiss of a bus's brakes. A hawker's cry turned to a thread by distance. The building's glass doors sighed open, exhaling conditioned air and eucalyptus. Kofi glimpsed his reflection in the lobby's steel elevator doors and didn't like it. Come, said Mr. Boateng, not toward the elevator, but toward a side staircase few employees used. They climbed to the mezzanine that overlooked the lobby. The CEO stopped at a small seating area where the company kept brochures. In a corner sat a potted ficus tree struggling under too much air conditioning. The CEO gestured for Kofi to sit. I learned many kinds of math in school, the CEO said, taking the chair opposite, but only later did I learn moral arithmetic, how small acts add or subtract from the sum of a life. You looked at that man and saw an equation that did not balance. Kofi felt a defensive spark. Sir, we have a culture of dependency. It makes us weak. We do, the CEO said, not unkindly. We also have a culture of honour. That makes us strong. Which one were you practicing? Kofi started to say something about economics and incentives, words he had picked up from TED Talks and meetings. They sounded like laminated cards. When he shuffled them in his head, he let them drop. I didn't want to be late for the all hands. Ah, said the CEO, then your choice was simple. Speed over dignity. It is a choice our city makes every day. But some things, Kofi, you cannot hurry without breaking. Quietly, Kofi asked, You called him Nana. Mr. Boateng smiled a little. He is Nana Kwaku Asare of Aswam, a retired mathematics teacher. His knees are not good, and his pension is thinner than it should be. He comes to the city to visit his daughter's family, and sits there sometimes. We talk when I get coffee. He once gave me advice that changed how I run this company. Kofi blinked. The beggar gave you business advice. The CEO leaned back and let that sentence stand like a chalk problem on a board. He told me, the CEO continued, that in any system, attention is the rarest currency. In a classroom, the student who receives attention learns. In a company, the The worker who receives attention grows. We had been spending money on new software, but not spending attention on drivers who handled our shipments. I changed that. Our delays dropped by 19%. Nana understands the math of attention. Kofi traced the grain of the table with a finger. His pride began to cough, as if it had swallowed dust. "Tell me," the CEO said, "about your mother." The question arrived from a door Kofi hadn't noticed. "She sells vegetables in the market, sir." Or she did. "Now my sister helps more." "And what does she call you when she's most proud of you?" Kofi almost smiled. "Ko," he said, short for Kofi but softer. "Would she have called you Ko this morning?" The question made a small ache bloom behind Kofi's ribs. He looked down. "No." "Good," the CEO said, standing. "The ache is a teacher." "You are lucky. Some people only meet it when they are 45. Kofi rose. "Sir," he said, the word catching, "I am sorry for—" "I am not a priest," the CEO said. "Do not confess to me." "Make amends where they belong." He checked his watch. "We have 15 minutes before the all-hands. Follow me." They took the elevator this time, the ride smooth and swift as a rehearsed apology. On the 7th floor, where strategy leaders worked in soundproofed rooms, the CEO led Kofi into a glass-walled meeting space, mahogany table, a whiteboard filled with numbers. 3 senior managers already seated glanced up, startled, then rearranged their faces into neutrality. "This will not take long," the CEO said to them, then to Kofi. "You want senior in your title." "I can smell it in your cologne." Kofi flushed. "Yes, sir." "Titles are mirrors," Mr. Boateng said. "They show you the outline of yourself and make you think substance is there. Sometimes it is, often it isn't. I will give you a different test." Kofi's stomach tightened. Pride, personified inside him, as a sleek figure with a silver tongue leaned forward. "We do not beg for tests," Pride said. "We pass them before they arrive." "There is a community in Nima," the CEO continued, "where we sponsor a program teaching financial literacy and entrepreneurship to youth. Our contact there, Madam Sefako, tells me their storeroom roof has collapsed. The books are getting damp. Take cash for materials, hire labourers, fix it." "You have 48 hours, Kofi blinked. 48? "Sir, I have the quarterly pitch deck." "You have 48 hours, the CEO repeated mildly. "Convince me that you understand the math of attention. Direct your attention to a place that normally lacks it. You will still deliver the pitch deck on Friday morning." The silver-tongued figure inside Kofi hissed. "This is punishment. You are being sent to the periphery to be forgotten." The CEO looked at him as if he heard the hiss. "One more thing. When you pass the coconut stand again, if you do, remember to pay your school fees." "Sir, go," said the CEO. "Listen to Nana's lesson." Kofi descended to the lobby with a small envelope of company cash, a work order signed by the CEO himself, and a feeling like air in a cracked tyre. He stepped back into the sunlight. The city's noise greeted him with its broad palm. At the corner, the old man remained on his stool, the cardboard sign steady beside him. The school children were gone. A coconut vendor was chopping green domes cleanly, water spilling into plastic bags with the cold drama of small waterfalls. Kofi approached. He cleared his throat. Pride in his chest rolled its eyes theatrically. "Are you going to kneel next?" "Nana," Kofi said. The old man looked up slowly. "Yes, my son." "I spoke carelessly," Kofi said. He felt each word like a small stone scuffed out of his shoe. "You asked me to share a little. I have shared too little of the right things." The old man's mouth softened. "Your voice is quieter now." "Good. Quieter voices often say truer things." "Please," Kofi said, "take this." He took out his wallet and found that his fingers were clumsy. He placed bills in the old man's bowl. It was more than he intended. He had reached without calculation, and his hand had been generous. The old man nodded, not counting. "Thank you, Ko," he said. Kofi started, heat rising to his face. "How did you—" The old man's eyes gleamed. "Mothers are not the only ones with soft, short names. Sit, if you can spare the time." Kofi sat on the edge of the coconut vendor's bench, near enough to smell the green sweetness. He expected a sermon. He received silence. The old man rested his gaze on the stream of people passing. A woman in a mustard dress, carrying a sack of rice on her head. A young man with a backpack decorated with football club pins. A trotro mate whistling, elbows out, corralling fares like goats. The city was a theatre of quick needs. Finally the old man said, "Do you know the story of the calabash halves?" Kofi shook his head. "When a calabash fruit dries, you can cut it into 2 bowls," the old man said. "One half holds water for the household. The other, if carved well, becomes a musical instrument. The sheker. Same fruit, different use. People are like that. The half you mock might be the half that carries music." Kofi looked at his hands. They seemed to belong to someone who had never carved anything. "What work do you do?" the old man asked. "Sales," Kofi said. "Logistics." "Ah," the old man said. "Moving goods. Do you also move hearts?" Kofi laughed despite himself. "That is not in my KPIS, Nana." "Not yet," the old man said, "but it is in your life's report." They sat for a moment. Kofi realised he felt calm. The city was as noisy as before. He was quieter inside it. "I must go," Kofi said. "I have been given a task." "There is a roof in Nima to fix." "Good," the old man said. "Roofs leak faster than egos, and if you're passing on your way, please buy me a coconut. The green ones are my favourite." "My medicine is mostly water." Kofi laughed again, this time softer. He bought a coconut, handed it to the old man, and watched him drink the cool water with a pleasure so unadorned that it felt like a blessing. "Go," said the old man, handing the empty shell back to the vendor for splitting. "And remember, when you fix a roof, you must first listen to the house." Nima's lanes stitched themselves between cinder block houses like narrow questions. Small shops selling phone credit and tomatoes pressed close. Goats made tidy chewing sounds. Children streaked past in uniforms. Laughter winged and skittering. Kofi parked and found the community centre by its mural, a spray-painted tree whose leaves were hands. Inside, he met Madame Sefako, a woman with braids coiled like rope and eyes that did not waste time. She led him to the storeroom. The roof sagged inward, a bruise on concrete. The air smelled of mould. Books hunched on shelves wearing fur of damp. "We were waiting for the next grant cycle," she said, "but rain does not wait." "We will fix it," Kofi said, hearing his voice sound like someone else's, someone he wanted to be. He called 3 contractors. 2 laughed at the timeline. The third, a calm man named Yor, with hands like a carpenter's prayer, arrived with a crew of cousins in 20 minutes. They examined the roof. Yor made a clicking sound with his tongue. "We will need a new corrugated sheets, timber, nails, sealant. We can do it in a day if the rain allows us." Kofi gave him the envelope of cash, like a right. He bought more materials with his own money when the envelope ran thin. Pride protested. "Are you a charity now?" But another voice answered, quieter and more stubborn. "Pay your school fees." He did not just stand with arms folded. He climbed ladders, carried wood, held the end of the tape measure with comically serious care. Children gathered to watch, eyes wide. One boy asked if he was an engineer. "No," Kofi said. "I'm a student today." At noon, the sky rehearsed a rain it did not deliver. Yor's cousins moved with choreographed efficiency, passing sheets up, nailing them down, sealing edges. Inside, Kofi and 2 volunteers peeled damp pages apart, laying them on tables to dry. A surgery of paper. He saw a workbook titled Small Business, How to Keep Your Accounts. He thought of the CEO's words about attention. He thought of how the company's vans would drive smoother through a city where boys who used these books grew into men who could read receipts and balance ledgers. As afternoon leaned toward evening, the roof stood straight again, bright and unembarrassed. The storeroom exhaled. The smell of mould began to lose its grip. "Come," said Madame Sephacore, leading them to the assembly hall. Women from the neighbourhood had brought jollof rice in giant pots. Someone had a Bluetooth speaker. High life tripped into the air. People ate on plastic chairs as if it were a festival and not a patching of a wound. Kofi found himself laughing without performance. When a child offered him a piece of fried plantain and called him uncle, something in him sat up and listened. "You have plaster dust in your hair," said a voice. Kofi turned. It was the CEO. He stood in the doorway in trousers and a polo shirt, as if he were just a man passing by. "Sir," Kofi said, half rising. "Sit," the CEO said, taking the chair beside him. He accepted a plate of jollof with the grace of someone who knows food is also a kind of thank you. "I hear you made yourself useful." "I tried," Kofi said. "Yor and his cousins did the real work." "They always do," the CEO said. "Our job is to get out of the way, and then to say thank you loudly enough for others to hear." They ate for a while. The CEO spoke to Madame Sephacore about the programme's needs. He asked the children what they wanted to be when they grew up. He did not hurry. When he finished his food, he wiped his mouth and said to Kofi, "Walk with me." Outside, the late sun made the street a long, warm sigh. "You have 48 hours, the CEO said. "You used 6. "What will you do with the rest?" "Return tomorrow," Kofi said. "Repair shelves. Buy plastic bins for the books. Organise them by subject. Teach the older students how to make a stock list and a sign-out card." The CEO nodded, pleased. "Attention," he said, "is additive." "Good. Another thing, a driver told me you have a sharp tongue sometimes." Kofi looked at the sky. The safest place to look when a truth stings. "Yes, sir." "Cut it softer," the CEO said. "Your words are machetes." "Useful in the farm, terrible in the house," Kofi breathed out. "I understand." "And about the old man," the CEO said. "Yes, sir." Kofi's heart climbed a step. "He taught me because I listened," the CEO said. "He will teach you because you apologised." He paused. "Tomorrow morning, before you come here, stop at the corner." Kofi nodded, as if hearing an invisible cue. Rain arrived in fine threads, not enough to soak, just enough to change the smell of the evening. The city sighed. Inside Kofi, something unknotted. Over the next day, Kofi returned to the community centre with plastic bins and a label maker borrowed from the office. He created categories: accounting, entrepreneurship, English, math, and arranged the books like a prayer for order. He taught 2 teenagers to keep a sign-out register, and when they got bored, he told them stories about clients who refused deliveries because a form number had 1 digit wrong, and they laughed and took the register more seriously. He learned people's names. He learned the weight of a hammer in his hand. He learned that gratitude is not a word, but a habit. On Friday morning, Kofi's pitch deck sat finished on his laptop by 3 a.m. He had worked after returning from Nima, yawning, drinking 2 sweet tea, but the slides were different this time. The section on delays included a photo of Yor and his cousins on the roof with the caption, "Invest where attention is scarce." A line chart showed how driver check-ins improved after weekly stand-ups, the CEO's idea, born from Nana's lesson. At 8:40 a.m, Kofi dressed, tied his tie carefully, and walked toward the office. He stopped first at the coconut stand. The morning was already sticky. The green domes looked like cool promises. Nana Kwaku Asare sat in his place, the sign propped beside his stool, the same quiet dignity gathered around him like a shawl. "Nana," Kofi said, "good morning." The old man looked up, his eyes warmed by recognition. Good morning, Ko. Your steps are lighter. I am learning, Kofi said. He bought a coconut and set it in Nana's hands. For your medicine. The old man drank, then wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. He looked at Kofi, as if through him and past him and still exactly at him. Have you listened to the house? Kofi nodded. The roof is solid. The books are safe. The children are building a register as tall as they are good, the old man said. You are ready for your other test. My pitch, Kofi said, feeling the familiar flutter of nerves. No, the old man said, and smiled. The test where you become the kind of man whose mouth is a bridge and not a knife. Kofi laughed softly. I am trying. Try less, the old man said. Practice more. One is thinking, the other is doing. Kofi opened his wallet. He had come prepared to offer money again, but paused. He knew, suddenly, and with a clarity that made him breathe differently, that money was not the only thing that counted as sharing a little. Nana, he said, can I carry anything for you? Or make a call to your daughter? Or bring a chair with a back for you? The old man's smile made the morning brighter by a small real degree. You may sit with me when you pass. You may greet me like family. You may remember that when a cup is empty, it is not only water it needs, but also the hand that lifts it. Kofi bowed his head. Yes, Nana. Behind him, footsteps paused. Kofi looked up to see a small scene playing out. A young man in a crisp suit, a version of Kofi from 3 days ago, stepping around the old man with a practiced blind eye. The young man's face had that achieving sheen, the look of someone who had monologues ready. He glanced at Kofi sitting there and smirked. Charlie, you too, the man said to Kofi. You are early today for almsgiving. He laughed, the harsh kind Kofi recognised. Kofi opened his mouth, and pride, once a silver-tongued figure, rose reflexively, ready to strike back with something sharp. Then Kofi saw over the young man's shoulder a familiar sandalwood scent arriving. Mr. Boating stood not 2 paces behind the young man, looking at Kofi, then at Nana, then at the young man. The young man, unaware, continued, Old man, rise up and go hustle. Medicine, medicine, always medicine, he chuckled, the sound thin. The CEO cleared his throat. The young man spun. His face rearranged itself in a flurry, like furniture pushed around a small room. Good morning, the CEO said mildly. Sir, the young man stammered, retreating into a bow that almost became a squat. Good morning, sir. I was just, learning in public, the CEO said. Continue. The young man's mouth opened and shut like a gasping tilapia. He looked at Kofi, at the old man, at the CEO. He found no sentence that could carry him across the gap he had made. Apologise, the CEO said softly. The young man scrambled for words. I am sorry, sir. I didn't mean... Not to me, the CEO said. To the one you stepped over. The young man turned, red-flushed. Sorry, sir, he said to Nana, the sir landing wrong and heavy. The old man regarded him as if he were an equation written messily, but solvable. One day, he said to the young man, you will be grateful for this moment. The CEO nodded once to Kofi, a nod Kofi felt land not on his suit but on his new habit of attention. Then the CEO said to the young man, walk with me, and they went off down the street, the CEO's hand light on the man's elbow, the way a teacher keeps a student from traffic. Kofi sat a moment longer with Nana, a quiet that felt like a pond, settling after a stone. Then he rose. I must go, he said. I have to present. Go, Nana said. Speak like someone who builds roofs. At the all hands, the auditorium cooled the crowd into a murmur. The CEO opened with company numbers and near-term targets. Then he invited Kofi to the stage. As Kofi walked up, pride in its silver tongue tried again. Do not look humble, it whispered. Stand tall and let admiration do the rest. Kofi took a breath and looked at the rows of faces. Drivers, accountants, dispatchers, managers, receptionists, cleaners, guards. He thought of a calabash cut into two halves. He thought of shekarers and water, and how both are necessary. My deck has charts, Kofi began, but first a story. He told them about Nima, about the roof, about yours cousins, about a register taller than its keepers. He told them about attention as currency, how it multiplies where you spend it. He didn't name Nana. He let the dignity of that morning remain untraded. People listened differently to stories than to charts. He saw it, the softening of shoulders, the slight forward lean. He showed the line chart of improved check-ins. We did this, he said, and he meant we. After, as applause swelled like relief, the CEO stood and said, "This is the moral arithmetic of Akwaba Holdings. We will build our profits where we build our people. Thank you, Kofi." The applause changed key, became something warmer. Kofi felt a twist of shy joy. He stepped down and found his seat. When the meeting ended, people came to clap his back. The drivers grinned as if he had said something on their behalf. An intern he had once mocked about grammar approached and said, "Sir, your story, thank you." Kofi met the intern's eyes and said, "And thank you for catching my mistakes. Keep doing it." That afternoon, the CEO sent an email. Subject, new role. Kofi clicked it with a steadier hand than he would have on Tuesday. Acting Programme Lead, Community Partnerships, in addition to current responsibilities, for 3 months. Goal, build sustainable bridges between our operations and the communities we serve. Metrics, attendance, driver retention, on-time delivery improvements, a number of local initiatives supported. Compensation, modest increase now. Review in 3 months, Kofi smiled. Pride sniffed. Acting. But gratitude stepped forward and placed a hand on his shoulder. "It is enough," gratitude said. On his way home, Kofi stopped at the coconut stand. The light was butter soft. Nana sat like a landmark. "What did the house say?" Nana asked, eyes twinkling. "That its roof was not the only thing broken," Kofi said. "And what did you fix?" "I started with my mouth," Kofi said. "I am not finished." "None of us are," Nana said. He took the coconut Kofi bought him and tilted it back. "Attention," he said, lowering the shell, "is the tuition we pay to wisdom." Kofi sat with him as the street slowed. Now, they watched people pass. A woman with 2 toddlers, a man in a delivery uniform, teenagers sharing earphones, a banker who had loosened his tie into a gentle snake. Kofi greeted people he knew, and a few he did not. Some greeted the old man first and Kofi second, and this felt exactly right. The silver-tongued pride within Kofi still existed. Some characters do not leave the stage. They only move back a few rows. But pride had lost its seat near the front. Gratitude had taken it, and beside her sat curiosity. They talked softly. Reflection, calm, lesson. These made a small choir behind them. Weeks later, when storms came with real force, the Nima roof held. At the office, the driver retention rate ticked up. Fewer deliveries were refused for paperwork errors because Kofi, in a training session, had told a story rather than scolded about a standard, and on the corner near the coconut stand, people learned slowly and then quickly to greet the old man as if he were sitting in a classroom that had no walls. When strangers asked Kofi about the day he laughed at a beggar, he did not deny it. He told the story carefully. He was specific about the smell of sandalwood and the way the CEO's shadow arrived like a second afternoon. He was honest about the sentence he had thrown into the street like a stone. And he told them what happened next, how a roof taught him about arithmetic, and how an old man's quiet was a better teacher than his own loud certainty. One Saturday morning, Kofi took his mother to meet Nana. She brought a basket of garden eggs and a jar of pepper sauce. The 2 elders greeted each other like old friends from a childhood they had not shared. Kofi's mother turned to her son. the proud corners of her eyes crinkling. "Ko," she said softly, and the name felt like a blessing he had finally earned. The true test of success is not what you own, but whom you lift. Today, choose one person you usually overlook: security guard, cleaner, vendor, neighbour, and pay attention. Greet them by name, ask what they need, and act on it. Share a little, pay your school fees.